What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm your host, David Michael, and I have a special co-host with me today, the one, the only, Michael.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show, Pops. How you doing?
I'm really interested to see what you got planned today.
So let's, before the comment section breaks out, let's just address this right off the bat. Is that your real name?
Yes, it is, and it has spawned many a different nickname.
So all it means is that, yeah, you have like a ready-made DJ monikers, right? A DJ Xerox?
Yeah, or Eminem.
DJ Michael Squared.
Oh, sorry, that's already taken. Eminem's already taken. Yeah, Michael Squared.
DJ Michael Squared.
Ditto. I use Ditto as my Discord name, actually.
Oh, there you go. This is kind of a weird episode because it's not exactly, you know, obviously we're not sitting at the DJ booth. We're sitting over here at my collection of these classic, archaic video game consoles. And I wanted to do an episode about this old box over here called the Commodore 64 that I grew up with, and for some reason I've have like a super nostalgic, you know, place in my heart for this machine. And a large part of that has to do with the sound chip that's in it, called the SID chip. Very well used, very, in some ways ahead of its time, and in some ways just an exploited, glitchy little chip that got abused and beaten into these beautiful, amazing songs. And so, you know, this isn't going to be the episode for everybody. It's kind of weird. It's super nerdy, right? We're going back 30 years.
We're having definite nerdgasms here on this one.
So we're just, you know, this is kind of self-indulgent episode. I wanted an excuse to do it, but we are going to kind of tie it into the DJing thing a little bit, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So basically what I did is I said, hey, Dad, I have this idea. I want to do this Commodore episode. But, you know, as I was growing up, you were the one that, you know, you and Mom bought the Commodore and then kind of introduced me to a lot of these early sounds, and we'll get into kind of how that happened a little bit later. But I said, hey, it would be really fun to just bring you in and do this episode. What do you think? And you said, yeah, sure, why not? So I said, give me a list of songs that you'd want to play, and I'll add a couple to it, and we'll do the thing. So I got even more nerdy and pretentious with it, and decided that there are a couple ways we could have done this episode, right?
Yeah.
We could have just done MP3 rips or played it, you know, through an emulator or something like that. But we're actually hooked up directly to an actual legit Commodore 64, and we are going to be playing through the actual sound chip, you know, routed directly into my mixer, the output of the Commodore 64. You're getting the pure analog recording. As it comes, you know, straight out, noise and all. You know, you'll hear when I actually hear. I'll unmute the channel.
Oh, the little hum.
Yeah, remember that?
Not as loud. I used to adjust my levels when I
try to EQ it out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a pain. So I decided that if I'm doing this right, I'm going to give you the raw, authentic audio. I'm not going to alter it in any way. So you're going to get noise and all. It's just coming straight through. And the way that I've done this is actually through this handy little device. It's called the SID to IEC, and basically what this is a micro SD card, and it plugs into the cassette port on the back of the Commodore. And you
mean the port that we never used when we actually played the games?
Well, we had a disk drive.
Yeah.
So it would take 15 minutes to load instead of 35 minutes to load a game.
Correct.
Right? So it plugs into this old data set port and actually gives you access to an SD card. And so there's this collection, and it's called the High Voltage SID Collection. And basically what it is they take all these sound files from the Commodore, basically everyone ever made is the idea. There's like 56,000 of these files, and they've compiled it all into one zip file that you can download. So I'll just read quickly from the, I think this is from the website itself. The HVSC project is an attempt to accurately archive the most popular C64 SIDs into one complete collection. The project was started in May of '96 when a few ambitious people decided to merge the many SID collections available on the internet into one masterpiece. The previous SID collections contained many bugged SIDs, repeats, and inaccurate credits, not to mention being highly disorganized, thus it was not a simple copy and paste, unfortunately. An additional challenge was being compatible with other platforms. The only way one true collection can exist is if we remain compatible with the major operating systems currently in use. As we merged the collection, we began to realize that many famous SIDs were missing, so yada yada. They kind of go on and basically explain, hey, this was a labor of love, and we've been working on this for years and years, and and they're still updating this collection. The last release was, I think, January of this year, and they've been doing this archive for at least 10 or 15 years. So it's a pretty impressive, massive collection.
If you remember, I've also pointed out to you that even in the old tapes that I made, that the hackers of these collections added their own little spin on it, and the chip itself allowed for voice.
Yeah, you could do very simple sound sampling.
Yeah.
If you knew how to exploit the chip.
Yeah. In some cases, it got really bad, and it was like, ick. but
it was impressive at the time because we'd never heard actual audio samples come through something like that. It'd be like turning on your Nintendo and hearing like a low quality MP3. You're like, what? That's weird, you know?
So, yeah, like even though we probably don't have access to it right now, in the tape collection there's an old game called Gyros. Oh, no. Apocalypse. Is Apocalypse.
Megapocalypse?
Megapocalypse.
Yes.
That's it. And they had a song by, I believe it's Ron Hubbard. The whole main theme ran through it. And they had somebody who hacked in a version of that, but it had this voice sample of this girl going, "My resurrection."
Yeah, it was like a late '90s, early 2000s like Euro dance sound.
Yeah. And then, sure enough, I found it on YouTube, and then I'm like going, "Oh, here it is." It's like, you mean those guys hacked it in? Yeah, it just blows the mind. All the sound that you can get just from that chip itself.
Yeah, especially for something so comparatively primitive. I mean, what else do you compare it to? Like the Atari computers of the time, which were sound-wise were terrible in comparison, or like a Nintendo Entertainment System, which sounded cool but in a much different way. It just had different set of voices and different set of capabilities, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I guess we should go ahead and get into some examples and start playing some of these tracks. So I found all the ones that I could find. Like I said, I downloaded the whole SID collection. It's like 56,000 songs, and I went through pulling out which, some of them have multiple versions by different artists, and you got to find the right one and look up the original musician and stuff. So it's been an interesting little project, but I think I've got most of the stuff. And I'm going to stand up here, and those of you who are watching on the YouTube audience are actually going to see me loading from the actual Commodore here. Let's see, I think it's sidplay.prg is the name of the program.
(8,1).
Yep, turning on the Wayback Machine here. Okay, so once it's loaded the program into memory, we just tell it to run. That's how old BASIC for the Commodore 64 works. And this is a program called sidplay. And basically what it's asking me right now is to choose a device. Let's zoom in here for the YouTube audience. It's asking me to choose a device, so it's just saying, hey, which SID chip are you talking about? This is just a normal, unmodified Commodore. It's only got one SID chip, so I'm just going to select it. Do you have a second SID? No. Funny thing about that, though, I do have a board. It's called a SID to SID, and it lets you solder two SID chips onto one board and then connect it. And then instead of 3-voice polyphony, you get 6-voice polyphony. Or another way to think of that is you actually get stereo sound, which you don't actually have on here.
Yeah.
Skips it, so it's just asking some questions about playing modified SIDs. We don't have to worry about that. And then keyboard or joystick. We're using the keyboard today. It wants us to pick a color scheme here, so you can choose. This is like the classic look, right? But funny thing about this Commodore, this is an old, cantankerous, this thing's literally as old as I am. And it has some issues, specifically with displaying a few lines of video down here. So I found that actually the darker color schemes just come through better while still being readable. So
there you
turn it on that right there. And here I've made a folder called podcast, and we've got all our SID files sitting right there.
Look at all those.
Yeah. So they're basically just alphabetical order. That's as good an order as any to me, unless you have a particular track you'd like to start out with.
No, you can start off any order.
Okay, well, Alien's up at the top, so let's start with Alien.
Oh, gosh.
And so basically the way this works is I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to load the SID file, which on a 30-year-old computer takes a few minutes, right? So it'll think for a moment, and then it'll just start playing. So it might kind of catch us off guard when it starts playing.
Yeah.
So one cool thing about this is one desirable trait about the SID chip is its filters, and this whole song is just like alternating filter settings. So you get to hear this loop and hear what the SID chip does with its filters. I'm going to pour us a beer while this is playing.
Sounds good.
So those kind of like wah wah sounds, like
yeah, it's almost like having the foot pedal there, you know.
Yeah, like a wah pedal for a guitar. That's the filters. Because the pitch of the sound isn't changing; it's just looping, you know. Listen how gritty that sawtooth wave is.
Brow, brow, brow.
I think this is one of those tracks that just loops forever, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea, and that's basically just a single voice coming out. So we're starting pretty simple. This isn't one of the most complex compositions, but it does show you kind of that gritty analog saw wave and those dirty filters that kind of make those iconic sounds.
Which, from my understanding, there's still some chiptune artists out there that are still using that gritty sound.
Oh yeah, with SID chips.
Mm-hmm. So you know, it's like, I mean, I loved it back then. I really loved listening to electronic music and stuff. I mean, even when I was in junior high, you know, they had little snippets of electronic music, and I was like, digging on it.
Well, that was another reason that I've been looking for a reason to bring you on the show for a long time, and this was kind of the excuse, right? But a lot of that, I mean, the influences on me and where I've gone with DJing and production and getting into rave music and all this kind of stuff, a lot of that started with those influences. It was this old machine playing these weird songs, and then it was like the kind of like European electronic music that you listen to that I didn't hear other people playing. You know, it wasn't just the radio hits of the day. I was hearing things, even like stuff like Depeche Mode. Okay, we'll take that one's pretty popular, but hearing stuff like that and just hearing the pads and the strings and the big reverb-soaked vocals and stuff really set me on a path. You combine it with this, and you've got my musical taste, right?
I think the earliest electronic music that I brought in the house was Kraftwerk.
Mm-hmm. I still have that CD that you bought. It was like one of the first CDs we had. It's Kraftwerk The Mix.
Yep.
It was like 92. Mm-hmm. And it was like a bunch of iconic Kraftwerk songs, but just like slightly remixed and remastered. And I still listen to that all the time. It's my preferred versions of those songs, you know what I mean? Because it's the ones I grew up hearing.
Well, you know, Mr. Cassette Tape here, you know, I record whatever I wanted to on the cassette tapes, or, you know, that was the preferred medium because, you know, basically records, tended to get scratched
Yeah.
and popping and hissing. Sometimes that sound is nice and classical to hear, but yeah, I got into tapes, and yeah, I'll be the first one to tell you that I've been through a lot of those different genres, like 8-track. Tell me about records, Daddy. So,
Well, you did tell me about records because all you got to do is turn to your right and see your old record collection up on the shelves over
yeah,
there.
I know. I was surprised that you still wanted them.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some gems in there. A lot of the ones that I post on like on our Instagram account and stuff, those are a lot of those are your old records. I've got behind that Passionate DJ bag back there. Do you see what record that is on that?
Future Shock by Herbie Hancock.
Yep. You didn't even have to read it. You know
No,
what that is.
I knew what the cover looked like from here.
Yep. And then I've got, Morris Day and the Time and all your old Parliament records and all that. So I love
God.
that stuff. I started buying more funk records to add to that collection. So I've got like Ohio Players and all kinds of stuff in there now.
Oh, geez.
So yeah, this SID chip. Let's talk about that a little bit. So SID stands for Sound Interface Device. Pretty simple. It was the name of the sound chip used in the VC-10, the C64, and the Commodore 128, which I actually have one of those right here. This is basically,
Shut off there, Vanna.
yeah, this is kind of like the, I don't know if it's proper to
Excuse
call
me.
it the next generation of the 64, but this is like another iteration. So it's got an expanded keyboard. It's got like the full number pad and stuff. And there were two versions of the SID chip, like the 6581 and the 8580 or
Yeah.
something like that. And the later chip was in this 128 and some other models of the 64. This one has the original. It's also the chip that was in the old brown bread bin Commodore. Remember the original
Yeah.
brown one, like Grandma had.
Yeah.
But we had the 64C. That's what this one is.
Yep.
That's the one that was in our house. So that's the one that I got back because, I don't know, nostalgia, right? So yeah, it was developed by Bob Yanis, who is an employee of MOS Technology. They were like a microchip firm. And his intention was to implement a real subtractive synthesis chip, which was totally different from all other home computer sound devices of its time. The chip's distinctive sound is easily recognized and was clearly ahead the competition. The chip combines analog and digital circuitry that cannot be emulated with 100% fidelity even today. See? So I'm not crazy. I'm purist, maybe. Emulated sounds do come very close to the original, and a layperson is not likely to know the difference. The SID sound is well known among retro gamers. And then I have a quote from the designer. He said, "I thought the sound chips on the market, including those in the Atari computers, were primitive and obviously had been designed by people who knew nothing about music." So he was serious about this thing. The funny thing is, they actually rushed the development of the SID chip, which is why they came out with a later revision of it. But they didn't actually get all the stuff designed to spec. They had to like cut a lot of corners. And a lot of that stuff resulted in the glitches and the dirtiness that ended up by the mid-'80s basically just getting exploited by all these musicians who said, oh, if I tweak this memory registry just right, then I can make it do this wacky thing that makes it sound like this is in stereo even though it's not.
Glitch hop.
Kind of. At least the glitch part. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, they're just like, what can we do to make this thing do awesome, crazy sounds? And it actually spawned what later became known as the demo scene, where people were trying to exploit both video and sound properties of these old machines and say, look, like we made a 3D engine on the Commodore. How crazy is that? And there are people that to this day, they develop Commodore software just to see what they can make it do.
If I had my druthers, I'd probably still have the machine. In fact, way back when, I'm going to say, the Wayback Machine 20 years ago, I was taking all of those old games and I put them on a CD and emulators and whatever, so that I could still have them. I still have the collection at home.
Yep.
It's like over 600 games or something like that. And one of them was the, I forget the music player that it was, but if you remember, I took a couple of the the music book from Pink Floyd anthology.
Yeah, it was called Composer.
Composer. Yep, that's it. And I made The Wall on it, and Goodbye Blue Sky.
Yep.
And it's like I think it had like 3 voices, and it was just enough so that you'd recognize the song. And I arranged it through the stereo so that it sounded stereo.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to talk about the mixtapes and stuff here too. I definitely want to get into that because that kind of leads into my influence, I think, about like, because in a way you were playing DJ with that. So we're going to talk about that. How about Arkanoid? Want to play that one?
Sure.
So this is a fun track. Arkanoid is pretty recognizable. A lot of people who've been gaming for a long time will know that title because it was on a bunch of different platforms. But like many multi-platform softwares of the time, the Commodore version had the best music. Yeah, these have kind of random load times, so.
Yeah, this one's... There we go.
Call this the drop. In DJ culture, this is the drop.
Yep.
So it's pretty neat because you and I are listening to this in headphones.
Yep.
And I promise to you that this is a single mono track that we're listening to. But as we listen to this in headphones, like I would swear some of these tracks are in full stereo. It's just the way that they're designed and the sound design and also just the exploits that they do to make it sound that way. They do these weird even though they only have 3 shared voices, with like 3 tracks to work with, they alternate between them.
It makes it sound like the sound is centered in a different area.
It does, and they'll stop playing one sound in favor of another, and if they do it in a clever enough way, it sounds like there's 7 or 8 tracks playing, but really they're just sacrificing some tracks in favor of others. You just, if you do it right, you don't notice as much. It's really clever. And the thing about it is, if you look into how to actually program this music, it's like programming. It's like typing code. I mean, it's not like, I mean, we did have like Composer and programs like that which gave you a staff, but as for actually like what these authors did to create this music, it's like typing a bunch of code at garbage. You know what I mean? And so it's like to not only take that code and make something musical and something that's exploiting the system and pushing the envelope is like, I don't know. It's like the Wild West of early synth design. That's so cool to me. This one was done by Martin Galway. That's going to be a recurring name you see. Also David Whitaker and also Rob Hubbard.
Ron Hubbard. No, Rob Hubbard.
Rob. It's Rob. Very popular names in the Commodore 8-bit scene, I guess, whatever you want to call it, as far as famous musicians in Commodore world goes.
Quite frankly, you could recognize some of the composers by the way they did some of their music.
By the style.
Yeah. Some of it stuck out so much, and those became favorites.
Yeah.
We'll hear some of them later, but, it's like Ron liked to do stuff like exploit the SID chip to make it sound like an electric guitar.
Yes.
and it was like hitting the guitar. It's like, "Brrr."
Yeah, plus with the sliding notes and everything. Yeah. You know what? Let's talk about this. So I'm holding 2 cassette tapes.
There used to be at least 4 of them.
Yeah, I'm holding what remains here. I have these 2, and then the one says C64 Computer Music Games Volume 1. One says Volume 3. And then I have another one that has Amiga music on it, and I think Commodore Hacker themes on it.
Yep. Ikari Stomp and all those good ones.
Yeah. So, what are these? I mean, obviously mixtapes, right?
Yeah.
What were you trying to do, and how did you do it?
Well,
And this is turning on the Wayback Machine. These are almost as old as I am. So,
I liked the music so much. I would literally sit in front of the old TV, okay, and I would play the game through to certain parts to get the rest of the music because they didn't have the SID collection.
you couldn't just like the music. You had to be a gamer, too.
Yep. Yeah, I will admit it. Yes, I'm a gamer. I confess.
Yep. Yeah, look behind me. I was born into this.
But yeah, at first, when I first started them, I would sit late at night, a couple hours, in our little 1-bedroom apartment, and at first I had this god awful little tape player, and it was a 1-channel recorder, so it's like
a boombox.
Yeah. And I would hit record, and I would, each time I played the game and said, okay, I've made it. Oh, okay, now it's going to switch over to it's loading the next one, and it's like then I hit record again to get that part, and then it's like afterwards it's like, okay, now they're 2 spaced apart, and then I'd have to go back and edit the tapes.
Yeah, like physically.
And I had it was a dual track boombox. And so it's like I would stop and play the tape and yeah, it was a heck of a lot of timing. And sometimes it worked out and sometimes it was like, meh.
What was your audio routing like? Like I think you probably did it a couple different ways. I don't know if your process evolved, but I remember, these are some of my earliest memories. So some of this I may have made up in my head over time, but I remember sitting in front of the analog CRT television, and you literally had mic'd it, and you were recording microphone recordings. And I don't know if that's how all the tapes were made, but I remember this happening at least once.
Yeah,
I think you eventually switched to like a line in or something.
I had a Rena-Center model stereo that it's like I had dual tapes on it, and I had dual tapes on the boombox that I purchased. And so between those two, it was like I would do all my editing back and forth, and then the final tape, would get the music that I wanted.
Yeah.
So it's like
so you get
rough, final.
Yeah. So you had to get the rough cuts, but then you're also creating copies of copies effectively. So you try to get the most pristine dub that you can, and then redub that, and so that you eventually end up with a final product that's good.
I went through the dual mic stage for a little while, and then it's like no, because I think we had a cat that actually came by and meowed in it or something.
Wicket.
Wicket.
Oh. That was my buddy.
Yeah. There was what is that? It's called RVC or something, where it's like a 2 prongs that connect to the back.
This here? RCAs?
Well, no, when the original Commodore, it had this like 2-prong thing that attached to your antenna.
Oh, to the screw terminals.
Yeah.
And
so you had to lead it to the back of that, tie it into that, turn it on channel 3.
It's the thing you used to connect your rabbit ears to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, it's like later we got a TV that had stereo headphone jacks. I'm like going, yeah, we're moving up. So, I plugged a Y cord into it, and then, it split the Y cord.
That changed everything.
Yep. And it split the Y cord into the back, and then I plugged it into the back of the stereo audio auxiliaries. And and then I'd had my finger on that pause button waiting to record every time while I played through the games.
See, so now you're a DJ making mixtapes, in my opinion. Even if you didn't consider yourself that, you're a DJ without an audience.
Right.
But, I mean, DJs make mixtapes, and you're going through this whole creative process and stuff. Tell me this: Did you have any planning or thought put into the order of the tracks and what followed what, or was it just a random compilation?
Sometimes it was random. Because
when I hear it back, they all logically lead into each other, but it's because they're the same track order that I heard for years because I used to listen to the tapes all the time. So I'm biased,
I liked certain styles of the music, and it's like, okay, I needed something to break it up. And that's how I thought. It's like, let's play these few awesome games together, and then have
the ballad.
Yeah,
yeah.
To break it up, and then, but yeah, I mean that's how what my thinking is on it. It's like, you've got the California games, and each one had, you played each little set, and then they had their own little music, and then it's like, okay, let's dub that in.
What's funny is I look at the old track list here. We've got Master of Magic on here. That's one of the tracks we're going to play later. Losing and winning mode included. So you'd have to play the game and die, and then you had to play the game and win.
Yes.
And record all the versions.
It probably took maybe 3 or 4 times playing the game all the way through.
That was a hard game.
To finally get to where I won. And it's like, really? It's only about 10 seconds worth of loop.
And we've got Night Games was another one, and it had jousting and stuff in it. But it was, you put Night Games: sword fight, staff, archer, flail, sword, pike, crossbow. So you had to go play every stage to get the music for that, and then you had to make sure that no action was happening, so you didn't get sound effects.
Right.
Which is the tricky part.
Then there was that's another interesting thing you brought up. I remember going through a lot of joysticks on some of these summer games, winter games. That they were compatible with the Atari. One. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, the single button Atari joystick,
and
same port and everything.
The thing about some of the games is they would tear the hell out of them because they had you doing going back and forth. And
to run, you would have to do full 360.
Yeah.
The game design and the thought and care and attention that put into creating these games that had directions and one button, and and they were, these rich games. It was just pretty cool. Comic Bakery is next. You want to do that one?
Yeah, that one is really weird because it's like Comic Bakery. You think it's something that's it's supposed to be whimsical, but it sounds more like it should be in a war video because of the way it plays through, and you're thinking, you should be a sniper or something.
This is another one of those tracks that, a lot of these games I knew for the gameplay, and a lot of them I knew because of the music and because you recorded it onto these mixtapes. So this is one that I don't even remember the original
This
game.
one is sort of like Burger Time.
Okay.
But you'd go through and you were trying to make cakes and stuff like that.
Listen to that analog sawtooth.
Yeah. But you see what I mean? It sounds like it should be in a military action.
Yeah.
I remember some of these hackers, hacking this in instead of another track that they had.
Yeah.
I think it was a Rambo
Okay.
Rambo First Blood, Commodore 64 version, they had this song playing in there instead of
Yeah.
the regular one, and then it's like the next one, it was the regular song. So
I'm gonna end with a Rambo 2 song, I think. Just listen how big those synth sounds are. Like this, nothing sounded like this back then. Not anything that you bought for $500 at a retail store, you know. Like people really strive to make these sounds now with like modern synths, you know. Yeah, it's good stuff.
like I said, it sounds more like it should be in a military game instead of something that's like comic bakery. Let's bake cakes.
Yeah, that was the thing, man. Like these games, they didn't really care what the content was. Like, we're gonna give this awesome music. Who cares? They had people who wanted to do that.
To me, and it was kind of funny. That's the whole reason I got the game, is because I heard the music to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go to these software shops, and there was people playing these games, and I'm like going, "Ooh, what's the name of that game? How much is it?" It's like, "Oh, $2 or $3, no problem."
Do you remember what was it called? DACUG?
DACUG. Dayton Area Commodore Users Group.
Commodore. I couldn't remember if it was Commodore or Computer. I remember going to those. I was 6, 8, maybe, going to those, and I had already kind of we had the Commodore since I was 4 years old or something. So we would go there, and I'd already know all about them, and so there would be all these people who were older than I am now, maybe like your age or my age, and they would have their little demo.
Yes, please don't touch the displays, little boy.
Yes, please don't touch. And I'd be like, no, really, can I show you this cool thing? And there was this one. Do you remember Sam Say It?
Oh, gosh, yes.
So it was like early speech synthesis, like super primitive, scary, crazy sound. It's kind of like a speak and spell sounding voice. And
but you could adjust the pitch depending upon what you typed in.
Yeah, yeah. And I used to have a blast with this thing, and I knew how to exploit it in different ways and stuff. And so there was this guy there that always had a 128, and he would play Sam Say It, and he would leave that as his demo. That's what he wanted to show off. And that old dude would never let me touch his Commodore, and I made it my mission. Like, one of these days he's going to let me use that, and I'm going to show him that I know all about it. And he never did. But that's my takeaway. That's my takeaway memory from that. What do we got next? Commando.
Now it's a military game.
Yeah, so this is a good one, and some of you might remember Commando. Actually, if I look in this cabinet here, I should specify Stacy has a copy of Commando for the Nintendo. That's this one right here.
Oh, jeez.
And I had actually forgotten all about this game, and we did this thing one night where we were drinking a few beers, and we decided that we dumped all of our old Nintendo games. We have a combined collection. We dumped them all in a bin, and we said we got to close our eyes and pull a game out of the bin, and whatever comes out of these 30 or 40 games, we're going to play that. Okay, cool. And Commando came out. I was like, okay, I don't really remember this game, and I turned it on, and the music started playing. And I went, oh, Commando. And then it came rushing back to me. But I went, this version sucks. Because it was the Nintendo sounding music, and the Commodore music was just so much different and so much better. And so I actually ended up finding the music and played it for Stace. Like, listen to this version. And she was like, okay, weirdo. And I went and found it and played it. She was like, okay, yeah, actually that version's pretty sweet. Actually, that brings up a good point, though. The way I was able to find that music, there's another project out there, and it's called Stone Oak Valley's Authentic SID Collection. And I'm going to put links to all this stuff in the show notes for anybody who wants to check it out. What this guy did was he was worse than I was. He took like Commodore 64, and then he took a newer Commodore 64 that had the newer SID chip, and then all the revisions in between, and then he built this crazy contraption and programmed the software with a bunch of relays and stuff that automated the recording of every SID file in the high voltage SID collection, recorded them as high quality MP3s. So for people who aren't complete nut jobs who just want to actually hook up a Commodore 64 into a mixer, this guy was one of those nut jobs, and he recorded them to MP3 so that you could download them. So I thought that was pretty neat.
No, I haven't recorded or downloaded them myself.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool I mean, if you like, he's got YouTube videos and stuff of these crazy rigs, and the way he's super authentic about it. He's like, I didn't add any EQ, no compression. He's like, I did this one little solder thing to get rid of this noise. That noise. Other than that, it's just the raw output, and so he's got these servers of these massive thousands of MP3 files of Commodore music. He said the purpose was to preserve Commodore 64 music in one of today's most common music formats, namely the MP3. The original SID music files today are played by millions of people around the world on software players that emulate the real hardware SID chips. The emulated audio material can vary a great deal compared to the authentic sound of a real Commodore 64, and from my point of view, why have something emulated when you can have the real deal instead?
Yeah.
One thing that I had trouble with when finding SID files and recordings of SID files was that there was a US version of the Commodore, there's a UK version, the NTSC and the PAL version. And if you played a game or a SID file that was meant for the other location, it would play like 5 or 8% faster or slower.
Yeah.
So if you played a UK version here, it played slower. And so I would play all these songs that I recognized, but it was like, why is this in slow motion?
Because you were so used to listening to those tapes.
Yeah. So if you look at the screen here on these tracks, it actually shows you this is a PAL system. It's using the 6581 chip. Like, it displays all that information there, which is pretty neat. Anyways, Commando. Let's get into this track. This is Rob Hubbard, one of the all-time greats. So those higher sounds there, those like, that's kind of one of the exploits they used to do, is they would make these like really fast arpeggios. They would play the couple of keys that are in a chord really fast, like, and it would just make it sound like this really big full sound. And these really fast arpeggio sounds are very stereotypical of Commodore chiptunes now. Those sounds. Nice and weird, just how I like it.
I think this is the only part of the song that sort of got a little...
That weird noisy part? Yeah. It's very ravey, though. This is one of my favorites, Feud. I, full disclosure, I played this game too, but I would literally sometimes, as a kid, I would load this game just to listen to the music. Because if you could load the game and leave it at the first starting screen where you start,
Yeah.
you were like Merlin or some kind of wizard, and you were collecting
Alchemical ingredients
and herbs and stuff. And
magic components so that you could defeat the boss at the end or something like that.
yeah, and so you had to bring all these components to cauldrons and stuff. But if you would just load the game and leave it where you started, nothing would happen. And so I would load it just so I could listen to the music loop. And I would just leave that on while I was doing whatever I was doing. Here we go. This track makes it very clear why I got into trance later. This one has a weird screechy part too.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't really like it.
Yeah, it's like some of the end of the stanzas, about 3 or 4 into the stanza part.
It's coming up right here.
And then it goes, it's like fingers on a chalkboard. Yep.
But how is that not like full stereo sound? Like it tricks your ears.
Well, if you'll excuse me, when I went and actually connected it to our stereo.
Yeah.
So you remember hearing it, even if it was mono stereo in stereo,
Yeah.
because I had arranged it so that I took a mono, a double jack, and then it was another Y chord, and the RCAs went in the right and left channel.
Yeah.
And I took the mono and put it from the TV to that, and that was how we got stereo, even though it was a mono track.
And like just listening to the synth work and how like that how it like the echo, the delay out time gets longer and longer. It just makes this weird like reverby echoey sounds that like not long after this I started getting into stuff like trance music, and it just makes a whole lot of sense. Like yeah, I don't know what's up with that weird part. But the melodic synthy, loopy, hypnotic, trippy nature of this, really I always dug it. Cool game too. All right, that's Feud. Crack Out. You can do that one.
That was another sort of a block.
It was like Arkanoid.
Yeah, Arkanoid. Destroy the block kind of games, and then
hit the ball with the bat and hit the blocks.
but the thing is that you would hit certain parts of the board, and you would get like extra power ups. It's like you suddenly had 3 bats, or you had bats that would make it slow down,
or you could shoot with it or something. Yeah, that was a pretty fun game, and the music to this game is pretty unique. But one of the really cool things about it is this is one of the early examples of a song that had it was like variations on a theme throughout the whole song. So like you hear the same chord progression and stuff through every level, but every level is also a different musical theme. So it's kind of neat. So we'll skip through a couple so you can hear those, but they're all based on top of this weird like chirpy sounding track, which it'll start out with as soon as it loads here. They're all pretty weird, but pretty unique. skip through a couple tracks so you can hear what I'm saying with the variations on a theme here. Stage 2.
I don't think that made the original recording. I thought the first one was fun enough.
Let's see, here's this one. There's one that I really like. This one. Bass line right here. They're just such big sounds, you know. You didn't hear that back then. Oh, and then it starts. Is that death sound? Right?
I do remember playing, or adding those to the end.
There's probably a victory sound or something too.
Yeah.
Or let's see. These are all sound effects.
Yeah.
Power up. That's when the bat got bigger and smaller.
Yeah.
All right. Mule.
God, there's a lot of memories on Mule.
This is a classic. Not only for the music, but for the game design. And this was another multi-platform one. This originally came out on one of the Ataris or an Apple II or something like that. And it won all kinds of game design awards and stuff. It's a weird-ass game. But it's really interesting. You're like, how would you describe it? So you're like alien creatures.
What it is, yeah, you're alien cultures, and you're trying to terraform a planet, and you're mining the planet and trying to
colonize it, right?
Yeah, colonize it. Basically, do the best in mining it and colonizing it, and then you would have to deal with pirates.
Yeah, pirate ship would show up and like clear out all your spoils. And you had to grow food, make sure you could survive, and then you were trying to mine. What were the minerals?
Oh gosh,
Crystite.
Yeah, Crystite was one of them.
The money one, and then Smith ore. And that's what you made your mules out of that did all the work.
Yeah.
And you would have to go and like plot all these little areas, and it was a weird game. I've still never seen anything like it, and it's like really hard to describe. I don't know how you would teach somebody how to play it, but the music was also very highly regarded. It's a weird, cheesy little tune, just like a lot of these are.
And the clomping noise is reminiscent of a mule.
Yeah, it's meant to be like a gallopy kind of noise. Yeah. I'm gonna put your hand dance on the camera. It just loops from there. Another one of those get stuck in your head all day kind of tunes.
That's another one that I probably set for about 5 or 6 times.
Maniac Mansion. That's a cool game. And that was another multi-platform game that I always thought that the Commodore version was the coolest. This also came out on like Nintendo Entertainment System and stuff.
They made a sequel to it called Day of the Tentacle.
Day of the Tentacle, which I think was more popular. A lot more people probably know that name. But Maniac Mansion is kind of where it started, and it's one of these early Lucasfilm games that used the what did they call it? Scum. That stands for something, SCUMM. But it's like a style of game, of adventure game, where it's kind of like a side scroller, and you move around and you choose a series of actions that's on the bottom of the screen. Like you'll have actions and then objects, whatever's in the room.
Yeah,
you might say
you would do a point and click to
pick up
objects, and then it's like the menu would tell you what to do with it, and
pick up lamp or read book or whatever, and some of them didn't make sense. You were like, read hamster or whatever. You'd be like, what?
Yeah.
But it was impressively good at accepting commands. I mean, you'd pick some weird ones, and it'd be like, okay. And you'd be like, oh, wow, that actually worked.
What was really enjoyable about the game was the interplay between the characters that they had on the game itself. You know, it's like Alan or Alex or whatever they would.
Yeah, because you could choose from like 10 or 20 characters, and they would
I think
all
there was
give...
like originally 8, and then like but
Okay.
you were only allowed to play 4 to 6 at a time.
You could play 3 at a time,
Yeah.
but I think like certain combinations of characters made it either impossible or really hard to win. So like you would have these. I think you and Mom had like an old printed out walkthrough of the game, and I remember Mom playing through it once, and she picked the characters that told her to pick, and it was you couldn't save this game. It was like you played through it, and if you died or lost, that was it. You know, games in the '80s are brutal, so it was like,
and you're literally talking about playing one game for hours and hours without having saves or breaks.
Yeah, she picked the exact characters that the walkthrough told her to pick, and didn't save the game or anything, and it still took her more than 3 hours to play through it.
At least 3.5 hours to
and
play
it's
through
like,
it.
That's a long time to go without saving. But this, the music to this was just awesome. It's about the only music in the game was just the intro tune.
Yes.
It should start out with like crickets, I believe.
Crickets, and then like the meteor comes in, and then the main theme song starts.
Yep. Here it is. Oh, they skip past the crickets.
Yeah. Maniac matches scrolling across the screen.
Had a really cool intro sequence, didn't it?
Yeah.
Breakdown. This was basically meant to be like a cheesy 80s horror film parody. It was like a self-ironic.
It's like having Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. So it was like it played to all the typical scary movie tropes.
Yeah, it was like
it's a really funny game.
Scary movie meets Rocky Horror meets.
And they had the tentacles were in. That's where the tentacles came in. They were like in a potted plant thing, and they would hop around. It was
which is a play on the Little Shop of Horrors too.
Okay, we talked about Master of Magic earlier. Describe the gameplay of that one. It was almost all entirely in a mini map. All the action.
Master of Magic. You were, and graphically speaking, this game was not very demanding, but you were like this little yellow pixel. And it was like a fog of war map, and you were literally crawling through this dungeon. And the theme song would play in the background, the whole thing, the whole time. And you would meet like bats you would have to fight, and then you would have to pick up sword and armor and whatever you can to.
Then there were skeletons,
and
skeletons, minotaurs, and bats.
The Minotaur was the boss.
Yeah, Minotaur was...
How many times I got killed by that freaking Minotaur. But...
once again, games in the 80s were brutal.
Yes. But yeah, you would go through, pick up a weapon, pick up your armor. Basically, you're getting yourself ready to fight the Minotaur at the end. But
this is like a very early dungeon crawler, predecessor to the Diablos and things that came later. But... Yes. Like you basically existed in this little mini map, and you would crawl around, and then it would show you the graphical content was mainly like it would show you a picture of whatever you were encountering. Like if it was a werewolf, it would show a picture of a scary werewolf, and then you had like a text box, and it would say the werewolf has attacked you.
There's a werewolf, run!
Yeah, or you should get the heck out of here, or the swing and a miss, or whatever happens. It was text based. You know, it's very primitive, but also very, I mean, did a pretty good job of setting the atmosphere and everything. And I think the music really had a lot to do with that.
But you were still able to interact with the game and have an action type of playing by playing the game actually, and then the text.
Yeah. This is one of the greatest songs ever made for the Commodore, I think. This is also Rob Hubbard. Very like medieval fantasy kind of sounding. Very appropriate for the game in this case.
And I like the sound effects played back and forth, and you can hear like chains rattle or hammers sounding on anvils. And here comes.
Very unique composition too. It's based on a previous song that somebody else composed, but.
Funniest things I remember about playing this song is that at a certain part coming up here, you would go ee-ah, ee-ah.
I know the part you're talking about too, because I later sampled that in a song that I made. The sound effect.
Here we go.
Yeah. Ee-ah, ee-ah. I love that low bass line too, so full. That one. You know, it was really hard to go through, and you had already picked such a list of good tracks of stuff that I would have played anyway, and it was so hard to, like, I wanted to put like Panther on here, and I wanted to do like Forbidden Forest.
But Forbidden Forest, Dance of the Lucky Archer.
Yeah, thing about Forbidden Forest was like the synth work was cool, but it was like a bunch of 4-second song loops, so it wouldn't really be great for this format, right? Like, we skipped through some loops really quick, I guess, but yeah, we're already about an hour and 10 in, so let's listen to a few more of these. This was Phantom of the Asteroid.
Yeah.
This is a good one. I think
another
this is another Rob Hubbard, yeah.
Yeah, Rob.
Amazing, that's only 3 channels of sound, only 3 voices. that weird breakdown part too. Yeah, I want to make sure we play that part too. That's those weird sounds in the background.
Yeah. The thing about Ron is he'd like to make all of his music sound just so epic.
Very epic, and also there was always something really weird and dissonant in it. You know, there like that breakdown part where it had all the weird background, like kind of off-key noise, like intentionally off-key noises. R-Type. This is one I added on. I couldn't do this episode without doing R-Type.
There's so many different levels to R-Type, though. Each one had a sequence of a different song, depending on, and it's all like high energy action. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Yeah, all action. It's high paced, and you better be ready for it. And there was music to fit. It's a super fun game, but just brutal, just like all '80s games. You know, it was a side-scrolling
shoot 'em up.
Yeah, shmup as they call them, shoot 'em up. So you were a little ship, and you would scroll along space, and
also looking for power-ups that would allow you to fire different types of guns and things to try to survive your enemy.
And this is a game that probably some of our audience is familiar with because it exists in a million different forms.
Yeah,
it wasn't exclusive to the Commodore. I think there was even a Super Nintendo. There's a Super R-Type and stuff. But once again, the music was unique to this version. And I'll just skim through a couple different tracks. This is one I could play the whole soundtrack to, but
yeah, well, it's literally probably at least another 20-something minutes.
Yeah, it's like a full album, which you didn't get a whole lot in games back then. Like it's very
and again, one of those. That's another one that I'd actually had to play through and try to get
that amazes
all the different.
That amazes me because that game was just
but
not easy on you.
Yeah, but unfortunately, you had to have some sound effects to it, and it's like I tried to actually make it match. Da 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 choo choo da da.
So that you wouldn't notice the sound effects.
But you know, you had to fire or you die.
Yeah. Here we go. This was Chris Hulsbeck, another common name. Zoomed in on you so they could see your arcade action over there.
Yeah, and you're literally pressing the button like this and trying to go back and forth, and pretty frantic.
Spend too much time on one game, but I do want to play a couple of these. This is a good one.
One of the first bosses.
Yep.
Yeah, at the end of this track. Sorry. At the end of this track, it would go into the high tense. Da, 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 da.
Yep. I think that's next. Oh no, that's a different
one. Yeah, you're getting closer, and they're throwing all sorts of crap at you at this time right now.
Here's the other boss.
Yeah. And this is where I had to fire to keep to survive. Yeah, this is where I had the fire to survive the level so I could keep the music. It's like da 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 da, and I go pew 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 pew.
Nice. So you were you were even sampling on top of your tracks. You were a DJ. Skate or Die. Skate or Die has this amazing simulation of electric guitar that I had no idea was possible out of this little thing. It's pretty neat. I don't know if it's sampled or what. It sounds like it's sampled, but
no, they did their best to make it sound like a riff, you know, a guitar riff.
Like that arpeggio that plays in the background the whole time too. Another Rob Hubbard track. Waiting for the... Didn't want to miss that rhythm guitar strum there. Yeah, just so cool that they, you know, we heard some of Rob Hubbard's other stuff, and then this is like something completely out of left field compared to that. That song's probably several minutes long, really. All right, there's another one on here, Spy versus Spy. That also existed in on a few different formats, I believe.
That was just a simple loop, but there's been like a group on YouTube that took it and made it. And plus, there's the OC overclocked mixes.
Yeah,
they made their own versions of it.
But one thing about this is you get really a sense of the analog nature of the synth. It's just really like plucky and gritty. Weird little game. Fun,
but I loved it because
quirky.
Yeah, Mad Magazine was probably one of the things that I read a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I confess, I read Mad Magazine.
So this was like this is turned on the Wayback Machine, but it was a split screen, right? And you could play it with two players. You were one spy on top and one on the bottom.
One was the black spy, one was the white spy, and you were trying to get together, whether like two or three different versions of the game. One, you were trying to get the compartments together to build the jet so that you can escape the island and bomb the place so that the white spy or the black spy dies, you know.
Yeah.
And you're both working, and you would shoot at each other and stuff like that if you encountered in cross screens.
Didn't you like booby trap stuff?
Yes,
too?
you would, and you'd see the pointed little spy laughing, when the other spy dies.
Yeah.
They had like a cone nose, and they wore
Yep.
white. One was white, one was black, and they wore these wide brim hats.
Yeah.
And so they would go out of their way to trick each other, and then they would laugh at each other when each other died.
Okay, I think that's our entire list of songs except for the Rambo track, and I did want to just send out to that one, so I'll probably hit mute and we'll just listen to that track on the way out. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or bring up or talk about the process or anything before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, we basically touched base on everything I did to make these tapes, which, it's like run patch chord, Y chord, back and forth, and, it really got intricate in some cases. It's like I made, let's see, the RCA to the Y chord, to the phono jack of the other one, to the Y chord, to the TV.
Then you had to try to counteract all the noise you were adding to the system by doing that.
Yep.
Yep. So then you're like, do I use the Dolby noise filter or do I not use the Dolby noise filter?
which fortunately the tape player had.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was surprised. The quality of the recordings that I made on the tape still stand up, and it's like, I tried recording them on Audacity, but the sad thing is the little cassette thing that I tried to use absolutely made an awful humming noise, and it was awful. So it's like, those are the best recordings that there are of it on that tape.
Okay, so this one, did you ever play Rambo First Blood 2? I don't remember the game at all.
I think, it's another shoot 'em up. You were trying to survive, all these terrorists and things, and you were going through. It was like a one scroll. You go from one screen to another screen, sort of like a Zelda, but you're fighting all these enemies, and then it's like they would send bazookas and grenades and stuff at you, and you were trying to survive to get to the last screen, I guess. Well, anyway, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Pops. This has been fun. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and thanks for being a trooper and coming in and doing this. It's been fun.
I hope I don't bore everybody.
No. This isn't going to be the episode for everybody, but for a certain piece of our audience, are going to think this is really cool. So, and this is track 2 of Rambo First Blood 2. Don't forget to visit us on patreon.com/passionate-dj. Sign up to become a supporter, and you'll get access to our monthly bonus show called After Party. Also, don't forget about our merch at passionatedj.com/merch. Get yourself a t-shirt, a hoodie, whatever you want. And this has been the Passionate DJ Podcast. Take care. We're switching this to track 2. Peace.